The left has ruined a particular form of fiction that I used to be really fond of. Fiction where the theme, the genre, is societal collapse. Not just because I think it's relevant today, but also because I think it's just interesting to imagine how different people from different walks of life would react to the existing social structure collapsing suddenly and being forced to work with and against each other in an environment that takes away their generational wealth and their status. But it's also interesting to me how different authors imagine how the collapse might take place in the first place. No matter what the catalyst is, zombies or widespread disease or cataclysmic war, it's interesting to see how different people imagine the society would respond to the crisis and why the crisis would ultimately defeat them and what the survivors might learn from this and how they might go about rebuilding from the ashes of what's left over. A popular TV show that kind of started out like this was The Walking Dead, but it's now just become a soap opera where every character is now engaged in either an interracial or LGBTQ relationship. The show is no longer anything about survival or how society would deal with a zombie invasion. Just like everything else coming out of Hollywood, it's just pure leftist propaganda. And that's why I was skeptical when someone told me that I would like this new movie by Netflix, the company that's been hard at work normalizing pedophilia, this new movie by Netflix called Birdbox. But I took one for the team, and I watched it anyway, and here's what I learned. I learned that white people are evil, and usually trying to kill you. You think I'm exaggerating? Well, think again. Before we get started, Birdbox is based on a book by Josh Malerman, and I have not read the book. So everything I'm talking about here is only relevant to the movie, which was directed by Susan Bier, with a screenplay written by Eric Heiserer. The movie starts off with some dark, creepy shots of a river, and we hear a radio transmission with a man talking about a sanctuary of some sort. We get the idea right away that one way or another, we're likely in a post-apocalypse scenario. We're introduced to Sandra Bullock's character, who is sternly lecturing two children about how they must obey her orders to survive the journey they're about to embark on, presumably on the river we were just looking at. She's very specific about one command in particular, and that is that they must never remove their blindfold. If they remove their blindfold, they will die. She packs them up along with some birds that she puts in a box, and they walk blindfolded, all of them, all three of them, to a boat. And thanks to the skeletal remains and the scary music, we know that we are indeed in a post-apocalyptic timeline, and we get the impression they need to hide their eyes to protect themselves against whatever evil thing has caused this. We now flash back to a time before the crisis. Sandra Bullock's character seems to be an artist, and she's painting a multicultural mural of sorts, which in many ways is a metaphor for the rest of the film. This film is just as much about race as it is about any kind of apocalypse, and the apocalypse, by the way, has just begun. According to the news report that she's watching on TV with her sister, there's been an outbreak in Romania, and it's spreading to Russia and Europe and the rest of the unsuspecting world. Apparently, it's some kind of mass psychosis going on that is causing people to kill themselves and get violent. In many ways, it seems like the beginning of almost every zombie movie where there's an infection of evil or whatever it is, and it's slowly spreading, and most people don't take it seriously until it hits where they are, at which point, it's too late. But right now, at least for the moment, everything's fine where she's at. She goes to a doctor's appointment. We discover that she's a pregnant, soon-to-be single mom. The funny thing about this movie is it really reveals how the leftist narrative overpowers every other element of the stories that they're telling. The years of subtlety are long gone. One of the reasons I tend to dissect older films is it's not always easy to detect the subtle propaganda. But those days are long gone. There is absolutely no subtlety in Birdbox, or really in any of the movies I've watched lately that have been made in the last 5 years. Honestly, I'm not sure if it's because the writers have gotten stupider, or if it's because the audience is stupider, or both. But either way, it really makes watching these movies painful. But I persevered, and I made it through it, so you wouldn't have to. So Sandra Bullock is at an appointment with her doctor, and right in front of her doctor, and again, these are leftist role models for white women, they talk about getting a bottle of wine after the appointment and getting drunk. You know, that's right, super pregnant, but didn't you know wine is way more important? And the doctor doesn't seem to really think it's that big of a deal. I mean, I guess everyone having kids with autism, it's not enough. Let's also give them fetal alcohol syndrome. After the appointment and on her way to get her drink on, Sandra Bullock's character sees a woman freaking the hell out. And she puts two and two together and decides this is the psychotic outbreak that she saw on TV. It must be here. And she flees with her sister as everything around her just disintegrates into chaos. In the chaos, whatever it is that's making people crazy affects Sandra Bullock's sister, and she purposely starts crashing the car. And then after she crashes the car, she gets out of the car and commits suicide right in front of her sister. Everyone around her is either killing themselves or killing other people or running for their lives. It's complete madness, and she falls on the ground and she's helpless. This is where we meet the first of many evil white men. Now, the funny thing about this guy is he represents a conservative Trump supporter, and the filmmaker's portrayal of this guy is so completely unbelievable, and it's clearly meant for audiences who their only exposure to this group of people is limited to whatever other leftist propaganda they've been watching is telling them. Even the casting choice, John Malkovich, who's always kind of given off a feminine vibe, is kind of a ridiculous casting choice, and quite frankly, he was probably only chosen because he's bald, and it plays into the whole skinhead aesthetic, but doesn't matter. There's a fair amount of projection, as always, when it comes to demeaning his character, and it starts right here, where even though he's armed with a shotgun, and he's with his wife whom he loves, he cowardly runs to safety and allows his wife to go into danger to save the fallen pregnant Sandra Bullock. His wife is then overcome by the mysterious force that's overtaking everyone, and right in front of him, while he just stands there and watches it happen, she burns herself alive. Like, no emotion out of this guy, no attempt to stop it. Like, this is his wife that he cares about. Nothing. He just, he's paralyzed with fear or whatever. But don't worry, guys. The character who has zero flaws in this movie, the random black guy, comes in and saves the day. And you might think I'm overreacting. Like, what? A black guy can't be a hero and white people can't be cowards? No, I'm not. Absolutely, I'm not saying that. But in this movie, it's not just something randomly occurring right in this moment in the story. This is the story. This is a movie about a single white mother who's confronted endlessly by dangerous evil white men and then repeatedly saved and protected by non-whites. It's laid on so thick that the whole disaster end of the world aspect of the film is reduced to a subplot or actually just an excuse to have the movie. This is something we're going to see drilled into the heads of the viewers over and over and over again. Now that the evil white Trump supporter guy has let his wife just burn herself up as he casually watches, and the random black superhero man comes to the rescue, the evil Trump guy also wants to keep them locked out. But lucky for them, the gay Asian guy lets them in because he owns the house. He lets in a few people, like the old white cat lady, the Hispanic cop who I presume is here legally, the obligatory black computer nerd guy, and the drug dealer white guy, all of whom nervously watch. the scary conservative Trump guy who's always pacing back and forth with his gun to the sound of scary music. So they decide that whatever it is that's making people kill themselves is caused by looking at some kind of evil presence that's flying around. And they close off all the windows. Boom, we take a quick detour back to the river, and this idea is reinforced that it is indeed some evil presence that you can't look at. We also get the idea that the reason she's carrying the birds in the box is because the birds act as kind of a warning sign that the evil presence is coming. Once that's explained, back to the gay Asian guy's house. Now it's been 3 days. There's a voice on the radio reiterating that, yeah, you need to stay indoors and you can't look at whatever this mysterious evil presence is. And that's when we're introduced to more character flaws of the evil white Trump supporter guy. Apparently, he's the gay Asian guy's neighbor, and he's been suing him to try to stop him from remodeling his house because, you know, those right-wingers, they really hate property rights. At this point, I'm starting to wonder if the writers are intentionally just applying random asshole traits to this guy indiscriminately because they just don't care, or if they really just have zero interaction with people on the right, so they're forced to project this kind of asshole stuff that they themselves might do simply out of ignorance. But either way, they make sure that you know he's extremely unpleasant, but in a weird way, he's also, and this might be some kind of cinematic manifestation of a Freudian slip, but he's also the voice of reason. Many of the things this character is demonized for complaining about is written off as if he's just being an asshole and being unreasonable. For example, when he suggests that they should be rationing food, they try to make it sound like he's just being a jerk and calling the pregnant lady fat. Or when there's a knock at the door and he tells them don't let any more people in, something that you learn later if they had listened to would have saved about half of their lives, they completely dismiss him and minimize his concerns as if he's just some kind of cowardly asshole that's just filled with fear and so much fear and cowardice that Sandra Bullock, the single mom-to-be, has to point his own gun at him, while the courageous, flawless black guy lets in a morbidly obese pregnant lady that will later kill most of them. So, it's not that maybe he's trying to help them, it's just he's this evil, fear-filled monster. Anyway, so the gay Asian guy, he has this idea that maybe they can look at these evil things if they do it through a camera, and he's got a security camera system, and he wants to test his theory. And yet again, the Trump guy is like, hey, this is a bad idea. You probably shouldn't do this. And again, they're like, oh, you're an idiot, and they don't listen. And guess what happens? It's kind of funny because it really does seem unintentional that they keep doing this over and over again. The evil white Trump supporter guy, and by the way, there's a reason I'm saying he's a Trump supporter. I'm not just, making that up or assuming that. They make that very clear later on in the movie. This guy, every time he says, don't do that, it'll kill us, they make him sound like he's just some kind of cowardly xenophobe and just being an asshole, and they don't listen. But then someone dies. And that happens over and over. And they never once say, wow, maybe we should listen to this guy. And it's almost as if the filmmakers themselves are oblivious to this and refuse to acknowledge to the audience that he was right all along. They never even touch on that. They just move on to demonizing him for the next thing that he'll later be right about. So anyway, we go back to the river. This time, Sandra Bullock and her kids are attacked by, that's right, an evil white hillbilly guy. He's possessed by the mysterious evil thing that you can't look at. And again, no big deal that the bad guy here is white, but it's every bad guy is white. And not just white, like a walking negative white stereotype. Like this guy straight out of the movie Deliverance. The only way they could have made him whiter is if they cast some pasty skinned ginger. Oh, looks like they got that covered. Anyway, so back to the house. Now, probably because they let in a morbidly obese pregnant lady who will later kill most of them, they run out of food. And they come up with this scheme that would never work in real life, but whatever, that they can get to the supermarket by blacking out the windows in the car and then using the GPS to drive blind. Definitely don't try that at home. Anyway, so miraculously, they make it to the store that way. Once they're there, the evil Trump supporter guy finally confirms that he is indeed the representation of Trump supporters by shouting that they're making the end of the world great again for literally absolutely no reason, with no context, and of course to the disgust of the flawless black characters who now know for sure that he must be a racist. This is where Sandra Bullock finds the birds and discovers that they can sense the evil coming because they start to lose their shit, and it's because a, drumroll please, evil white guy starts to attack them. Now, luckily, even though the Trump supporter guy is once again cowering in fear in the corner, even though he's the only one with a gun, luckily for the group, the flawless character, the black computer nerd guy, sacrifices himself for the group and saves the day. After that, they return to the house with the food. The evil Trump supporter guy starts drinking some whiskey, and because Sandra Bullock's character is intent on damaging her unborn baby, she decides to have a glass of whiskey with him. And this starts to seem like maybe this is going to be a moment where they show some of his humanity. Like maybe this is where these characters are going to connect, but instead, really, it just amounts to her calling him a useless asshole and comparing him to her dad, who presumably is also a useless asshole because, well, he's an evil white guy. And while that's going on, another evil white guy, the drug dealer guy, runs away with the Hispanic girl, and they steal the car and leave. So the group is a little distraught, and the cartoonishly courageous, flawless, young black guy and Sandra Bullock start to get it on. And while that's going on, the morbidly obese pregnant chick decides to just let in some random guy who, as it will turn out later, of course, will be an evil white guy. Now the Trump guy, as per always, seems to know this is a pretty bad idea, and he tells them, hey, we need to kick this guy out. But once again, he's just saying that because he's this xenophobic piece of shit right-winger. So the cat lady saves the day and knocks him out with a frying pan because, you know, they would rather protect this refugee that they just met and know nothing about more than the guy who keeps being right about all the bad things trying to kill them. You know, it's weird. I feel like there's a metaphor in there somewhere. I just can't put my finger on it. Anyway, now that the clearly dangerous white Trump supporter guy is safely locked up in the garage, the two pregnant women simultaneously go into labor, and the cat lady starts to deliver their babies. But wouldn't you know it, it turns out the guy they let in really is a psycho. And since they locked up the Trump guy, he can't help him. So the psycho refugee guy, he opens up the garage door that's protecting the Trump guy from the outside, knocks out the black Superman, and then he kills the cat lady, kills the morbidly obese lady, and then before he can kill anybody else, through some miracle, the Trump guy, despite just being completely written off the entire movie and treated like shit, still tries to save the day. Turns out the stupidity of the group has finally overwhelmed him. No matter how many warnings he gave them, no matter how much he himself prepared by being the only one with a gun, for example, the bad decisions of the people that outnumbered him were beyond his control, and eventually it killed him. You know, I sense another unintended metaphor in there somewhere. I just can't. Anywho, so now that the Trump guy is dead, You know, he tried to open up the can of whoop-ass, but all he could do was really loosen the lid. The Black Superman comes to, and he finishes the job and saves the day, and everything is great and perfect. So now that the audience has been repeatedly subjected to these very violent, negative scenes and images of white men, they're now presented with the alternative. This is the only time in the movie where there's a lull in the constant suspense. This is the time where the audience is supposed to feel very good emotions as we fast forward 5 years, and we're now presented with images that are becoming so common and obvious that it's almost becoming a cliche. The loving, perfect, heroic, courageous black man. And after a gratuitous love scene, we once again hear the voice from the beginning of the film talking about sanctuary. There's a safe place for them to go to. And after some discussion, they decide to go. The serenity and the peace is shattered when they're once again attacked, this time by an entire gang of evil white people. As I told you, it's every single time. And by the way, there's an important detail that I forgot to mention here. Some of the people in the movie, when they're exposed to the evil demon thing that you're not supposed to look at, they get sad or they get scared and then they kill themselves. Other people, when they see the mysterious evil thing, they get happy and they embrace it and they get murderous and they kill other people after, they turn evil. And the implication is that it's the good people that when they see the demon, those are the people that kill themselves. While the people that already have evil inside them, they're the ones that think it's beautiful and they start killing. And I only bring this up because isn't it interesting that the filmmakers thought that the only people they should cast for that type of person, the type of person that would be already so evil that they would have that evil inside them, every single one of them would be white. They're the only ones that are so evil that their inner evil takes over. In fact, let's contrast that now with the hero of the film, this guy, who in addition to being perfect in every single way, like zero character flaws the entire movie, after he gets exposed, by the way, sacrificing himself to protect Sandra Bullock and the kids, after he gets exposed, not only he does kill himself instead of turning evil, but before he kills himself, he's so flawless of a character that he actually manages to kill all the evil white people first. He kills all the evil white people before fully succumbing to the evil presence and then killing himself. The contrast is clear. I mean, there's a little more to this movie afterwards, but they kind of already made their point, so it kind of seems like filler. I mean, they eventually make it to the safe space, and it turns out, of course, to be a multicultural wonderland. Something you would expect, right? If all the white people are turning into demons. So, of course, they're not going to be in the sanctuary. In fact, the only white people that seem to be in the sanctuary are physically blind. So the only reason they're not demons is they can't see the demons because they're physically damaged. This is clearly an anti-white propaganda film dressed up as a post-apocalypse film. You don't even find out in the end what the evil demon things are because it doesn't matter. It was just an excuse. It was just an excuse to repeatedly demonize white people while the audience is under the stress induced by the suspenseful scenes. I mean, propaganda makes its way into your head much, much easier when people are in an emotionally heightened state, when adrenaline's pumping. That's why they can charge so much for sports ball ads. This is when people are most susceptible to suggestion. And it's in this susceptible state that the audience is being told repeatedly that white people are scary. White people, they want to hurt you. And even if what they're saying seems reasonable, and even if they seem to have a track record for being right, you need to ignore what they're saying. Because after all, they're dangerous. For Black Pilled, I'm Devin Stack. If you like my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you share so we can get past the algorithm. Make sure you click the little notification bell as well. If you want to help support these videos, you can grab a copy of my book, Day of the Rope. The link is in the description. You can donate crypto to the addresses below, but also go to patreon.com/blackpilled or subscribestar.com/blackpilled.